Good afternoon. We'll start our political science today from the book Contemporary World Politics, and the first chapter is Cold War. We will discuss what is Cold War, what are the reasons behind Cold War, who are the two superpowers who has been involved in this Cold War, what are the treaties, how many treaties has been signed during this Cold War, what is the role of India in Cold War. So now let's begin our chapter, Cold War. What is Cold War? Cold War is basically a war of ideology, a war without weapons, a war without arms and ammunities. The two parties will not involved in a direct war. That is called Cold War. So, we will discuss what is the reason behind Cold War. First of all, from 1945 onwards, there was when the Second World War has ended, at that time the two superpower emerged, and those two superpower are the USA and the USSR, but they become rival to each other because of Cold War. Now we will discuss what is the reason behind this Cold War. So the most important reason behind this Cold War is Cuban Missile Crisis. Now what is Cuban Missile Crisis? There was a place called Cuba near America. It's almost about 150 kilometers away from the southern border of USA, and this Cuban government were having a revolution against USA, and they have a very good relationship with USSR or the Soviet Union. Soviet Union were providing diplomatic and financial aid to the Cuban government. And the motive, there was another motive of Soviet Union also. They wanted to make this Cuba a Russian base. They have placed a missile over Cuba. When the USA government came to know about this, that USSR has placed a missile in Cuba, they become hostile to each other. USA government wanted USSR to remove that missile, but the USSR was not ready to remove that missile. So it was a threat for Cuba as well as for USA. If USA became angry, and if they took any step further, then USSR might use that missile. So if in case that missile has been used, both Cuba as well as USA will be destroyed. But USSR cannot use that missile because USA also has a nuclear missile. There were only two countries in the world who have nuclear weapons at that time. So both USA and the USSR does not wanted to involve themselves in a hot war or a war with arms, because if in case both of them involved in the hot war, then the whole world might be destroyed at that time. This is the reason a clash between the USA and the USSR because of the missile in the Cuba came to be known as Cuban Missile Crisis. This is also the main reason for the outbreak of Cold War at that time. So this Cold War happened after the end of the Second World War. So now we will discuss how this Second World War has ended. All of us have known that during Second World War, USA has dropped atomic bomb on Japan's economic business state, that is called Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And the Hiroshima and Nagasaki has been completely destroyed at that time. But many critics says that it's not necessary to drop bomb in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, Japan state. USA only wanted to show its supremacy to the world. They wanted to show to the whole world that they are very, very powerful. Actually, the Second World War has almost ended at that time. There was no need of the dropping of bomb. Many critics used to say that USA only wanted to show their supremacy. So when the USA has dropped that bomb on Japan so Japan does not have any other options, so they have to surrender. After the surrender of the Japan, the Second World War has been ended. The term period of the Second World War is from 1939 to 1945. When in 1945 the Second World War ended, then emerged the two superpower, that is USA and the USSR, and both of them become hostile, or both of them become rivals to each other. Both of them have a nuclear weapon. Both of them were the superpower of the world, but against to each other, and both of them does not wanted to involve themselves in a hot war, because Second World War has just ended, and because of this Cuban Missile crisis, the Cold War has happened between the two. So if in case there was a war because of this Cuban Missile, there was a war between USA and the USSR, it was impossible to declare one side or the other side as the winner, because of that nuclear weapon, because both the superpower have nuclear weapons. So if in case they use that nuclear weapons, then the whole world might be destroyed at that time. That is the reason they did not involve themselves into a hot war or a war of weapons. So Cold War is a war of ideology. First point, war of ideology. The two superpowers who has been involved in this Cold War are USA and the USSR. The main reason behind the Cold War is Cuban Missile Crisis, and this Cuban Missile Crisis or the Cold War happened after the Second World War. The Second World War ended when USA dropped atomic bomb in Japan in Hiroshima. So after the Second World War, the Cold War happened between the two superpowers. Now the emergence of the two power blocks. Who are those two power blocks? The two power blocks are USA and the USSR. Both of them were keen to expand their spheres of influence in different parts of the world. They wanted to expand their influence or their power to the whole world, in different parts of the world. So the smaller states, they wanted to have alliance with each of the superpowers. They had their own motive behind that. They wanted to gain protection, they wanted to gain weapons and economic, and the local rivals, mostly regional neighbors with whom they had rivals. So the smaller states have their own motive behind having allies with the superpower. So the case has been divided, first started in the division of Europe. Most of the countries of the Western Europe sided with the US, and those of the Eastern Europe joined USSR. This is why we used to call them Western Alliance and the Eastern Alliance. Western Europe wanted to have a very friendly relationship with US, so that US will help them in time of crisis. Similarly, the states of the Eastern Europe also wanted to have a relationship with USSR. The purpose is similar. They wanted to get aid from both the sides. Now the Western Alliance were formalized into an organization that is called NATO. NATO, NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which came into existence in April 1949. It was an association of 12 states which declared that armed attack on any one of them in Europe or North America would be regarded as an attack on all of them. So, the Western Alliance, headed by USA, the western part of Europe, who has been sided with USA, they formally organized an organization that is called NATO. And the main objective of the NATO is that no superpower can use their nuclear weapon. So it was this is the reason both of them cannot use their nuclear power. If they use their nuclear power, then there will be devastation everywhere. So because of this NATO, they were not allowed to use their nuclear weapon, neither in the opposite direction, opposite side, Like USA was say USA cannot use that missile against USSR, nor USSR can use that missile against USA or any other parts of the world. That is the main purpose, or that is the main motive of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So please don't forget, Western Alliance and Western Alliance was an organization of NATO. Western Alliance and NATO are same, headed by USA. And the Eastern now Eastern Alliance. Eastern Alliance was also known as Warsaw Pact and is headed by Soviet Union. And what its principle was to counter NATO's forces in Europe. Whatever NATO's forces are there, the main purpose of the Eastern Alliance is to counter them. So this is Eastern Alliance and Western Alliance actually are the smaller states or the smaller countries which has been sided with USA and the USSR. After they become Western Alliance become NATO and Eastern Alliance became Warsaw Pact, because these smaller countries have their own motive. They wanted to get benefit from the superpower, and the superpower cannot involve themselves directly into a war because of these alliances. Alliance means friendship. If there is a friendship with any other country, then they have to protect them, right? This is the reason. The main principle of the NATO was that, or the NATO or the Western Alliance was that no superpower can use nuclear weapon, and this is one of the reason that both the superpower cannot involve themselves into a hot war. Now I want all of you, I'm giving you few questions till here. We'll stop our class till here, and some questions. Please write down the questions and make a note of answers also. First question is, what is Cold War? What is Cold War? A second question, who are the superpowers involved in Cold War? What is Cuban Missile Crisis? Why did USA dropped atomic bomb on Japan and is it necessary or not? Then, what is Eastern Alliance and Western Alliance? What is the main principle of Western Alliance or NATO? What is the main principle of Western Alliance or NATO? What is the term period of Second World War? So these are the questions which you have to give me the answers. Thank you.